Well, welcome to the project showcase for Partner to Decide. I'm Jill Hannay. I am a product designer at Blink UX. Lily, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Lilly Murphy. I'm a visual communications designer at Blink UX.
So this session, as you probably read in the description, is a really informal opportunity to get to know our process, and we'll be showcasing a pro bono project that was completed in 2022. So we'll be walking through a deck that we have prepared, but feel free to drop questions in the chat as well as say hi, introduce yourselves. You can also just jump in, interrupt if you have a question. Please do so. We'd love to just have a conversation. I know that many people join these sessions because they're interested in Blink as a whole. Hi, Summer. I know some folks are just interested in how Blink works, how the HCD process might look at Blink. So if you have questions that aren't really specific to the project but might seem like a tangent, don't be shy. Go ahead and share your questions. We're here to chat. So, Partner to Decide. This project, the goal was to empower value-based advocacy in pregnancy care. We worked with a client based in Boston, and we really wanted to help them offer pregnant people a clear, unbiased place to get information, consider their values, and make an informed decision. This is our project team. So for pro bono projects, we have 3 interns and 3 directors, as well as a project director working on the project. So the practitioner team was Lily, working as a visual designer. Sunny Chang was the UX designer. Katie Hu was the UX researcher, and Kate Polish was the project manager. She's actually a project manager at Blink, not an intern. And then on the director side, we had Megan Greco leading the project. I was the UX director. Sylvan Durst was the research director, and Ben Schoen was the creative director. So this is a pretty typical project staffing mix. Well, just the practitioner half, not the intern half. But our projects do flex depending on the needs of the project. But this was a great example of an interdisciplinary collaboration between UX research, visual design, and UX design. And then on the client team, Anne Peralta, the star of the show, she is the brains behind the Partner to Decide tool. And her team was Carrie Randolph and Craig Andrade. So we worked, I'll show you a timeline in a minute, but the final deliverables for the project were some foundational research that generated themes and opportunities from actual patients and practitioners, a UX and competitive audit, visual design direction, a brand and a brand mark, concept and visual design testing results, a clickable prototype, and lots of documentation that we'll dig into and show you as well. So here's the project timeline. This was a very fast project to do. They did a ton of work. So you can just see a high-level snapshot of the process here. And like I said, we'll get into the details, but these 3 streams at the bottom represent research, interaction design, and visual design. Lily, you have any comments or anything to share about the timeline or just that overview for project background?
No, that's great.
Nope, that's what we did. This is what we did. So we'll be showing you some of the beautiful work that came out of it. But I'll talk a little bit more about the challenge. So what was the problem? So we worked with Partner to Decide to transform a pamphlet, a paper tool, into a digital decision aid tool that helps pregnant people make informed decisions about labor induction. These are some really this is what the paper tool looked like. So it's a 3-page, 8.5 by 11 sheet with a lot of information on it. And so obviously you can see there's some opportunities here when you're moving into a digital solution. So why was this a worthwhile challenge? Labor induction is an important part of the pregnancy process. It's a method used to make labor start. There's various ways that labor is induced, and sometimes it's necessary to avoid risk factors during pregnancy. But in healthy pregnancies, it should be a choice, and that's a main priority for a partner to decide, and our client who wanted to help pregnant people make an informed decision and not feel like they were just in a situation where they felt pressured or had to do what their provider decided was best. So there's an equity side of this problem as well. So research shows that pregnant people of color, also as well as folks who are publicly insured and people with lower levels of education, are less likely statistically to be given the information they need to make an informed decision about labor induction. So often what happens is a practitioner will present it as not an option, but as something that is required or needs to happen. And based on some of these other factors in a patient's life, they'll be more likely to have or be told that they need an induction rather than being encouraged to make a decision in collaboration with the practitioner. So our big takeaways, goals for this project: communicate unbiased information to patients in a simple and digestible way. Create a warm brand that is clinical enough to be used and trusted by both patients and providers. Use visuals and information to disrupt the current standard of care regarding patients' choices during pregnancy. And I'll hand it over to Lily to walk through the solution.
Okay, thanks, Jill. So in the beginning, there was a little sneak peek at some of our final deliverables in that introduction, but I'm gonna kind of continue that and show our solutions to the challenges and kind of how we address those main goals before we dive into the process of how exactly we got there and came to those conclusions. So I'm gonna start by introducing our signature experiences, starting with My Choices, which is a section of the digital tool that offers a really simple side-by-side comparison chart of the various labor options when going past your due date. So this feature is kind of similar to those comparison charts you might come across when deciding what new phone to purchase, or if you want to buy a car. Like, having that side-by-side visual is really helpful and makes it a little bit easier to spot some key differences that might influence your preferences or what choice is most appealing to you. The second signature experience is My Values, which was a really important part of the product for both Anne and her team and the users that we interviewed. This is an activity that allows users of the Partner to Decide tool to better understand what matters most to them. So it's a survey for them to really think about things like how much time they're going to be in labor, or perhaps cultural preferences, or things that them and their partners have discussed, and kind of put all those factors out on the table and prioritize what matters most to them, and that can help guide them in their decision regarding labor induction. The third signature experience is our note-taking tool. From what we heard, throughout your entire pregnancy, there is a lot of information to consume and a lot of random questions and feelings popping into your head, things to ask your provider or discuss with your family. So we wanted to accommodate that and make sure that we had an experience in here that made it easy to jot down those notes and questions and revisit them later. So that is what our advanced note-taking tool was for, which is a good segue into our last signature experience, which was my stuff. And this was a central hub on the tool that stores things like the values-based survey results, any notes that you may be taking, any questions you may have. And we'll get to see a little bit more of what that part of the tool looks like in the prototype. So those were our 4 signature experiences. And now I'm going to hop in. We designed the tool for both mobile and desktop so that users could access it on the go or at their provider's office, and then also a desktop version. So that is the prototype I'm going to briefly walk through. And Jill, if you have anything to chime in, I feel like I'm talking a little fast, but if you have anything to chime in while I'm walking through this, just hop in.
You know, one thing I did not touch on when we were talking about the challenge is the multilingual aspect of that. Since you have this screen up, can you just explain why it's in multiple languages?
Yeah. I am currently forgetting the name of the hospital that Kari and Anne kind of were piloting the paper-based tool at, but they served a community of patients that very multilingual patient base. So it was Haitian Creole, Spanish, and English that we were able to incorporate into our designs for this project. But I know they have a vision to just make this really accessible for all audiences, all languages. So I'm sure they've got a vision to add a lot more in there. But those were the 3 that we started out with because they were the prominent languages at the hospital that I don't remember the name of.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. So yeah, we have our it's very simple language onboarding when entering the website. You kind of are greeted with this really high-level introduction of what labor induction is and some quick facts, and then are immediately kind of exposed to the 3 choices that you have when going past your due date with some kind of glanceable information. We have a kind of hero data viz section here that was really intended to make users just feel like they're not alone in having to make such a kind of daunting decision, or what some may feel is a daunting decision. A lot of pregnant people go past their due date, and so I lost my mouse, but this kind of just shows at the various stages of going past your due date how many other people are in the same boat and facing the same challenges that you are. And then we have a little section about the organization and Anne. So that's the landing page. And some people come to this tool knowing exactly what they want and kind of have a preconceived idea of what's going to be best for them. And that's all that they really want to learn more about. And some people don't know at all and want to compare all of them. So that's where that My Choices experience comes in. You can get this all up view of the 3 options and compare different factors like timing, when you're likely to go into labor, how long on average you may be in labor when going forward with one of those options, things like how likely pain medication may need to be used, and things like that. We also have the risks on that comparison chart, but made the choice to kind of truncate those. That was something we found in foundational research, was there was definitely a desire for upfront, non-biased information. Just give it to me straight, but just let me know when there could be some potentially triggering or like disturbing statistics and facts. So that's where we kind of collapsed the risks there. I'll talk a little bit more about our data visualization and why we decided to represent different pieces of data the way we did. And then also on this page, you can see our kind of pop-up definition. This was a feature that we wanted to incorporate for literacy levels and different languages. There's a huge kind of bank of terms used in healthcare and specifically in pregnancy. And so if any of these kind of complicated words came up, you'd be able to hover over and learn a bit more about it. So from here, if you go through your choices and are particularly intrigued by one and think that that might be your option, you can go and learn more about it. Each option has their own page like this where you can just dive a little bit more in depth about what exactly that choice may look like. This is also where you're able to start taking notes. So if you see a specific fact that stands out to you or that you might want to know more about, you can highlight it, maybe add a question or a note, and then just pin it to revisit later. And on each of these pages, there's that same comparison data just for that one choice. So you can kind of focus in on that one option. And then the other part of the tool that we talked about, the My Values survey, looks a little something like this. It's a slider activity. You answer a series of questions that just ask you to kind of rank on a sliding scale how important each factor is. And so you can fill that out and go through a series of questions. At the end, you're given this really great takeaway that you can print out or bring with you on your phone to your provider. It doesn't make a decision for you. That was really important, but it just kind of helps sort through patients' priorities and help them understand, you know, if not being in labor for very long is the most important thing to you, how does that factor into what decision you're going to make? And then the last part of the tool is that My Stuff kind of hub. That's where that summary will live for you to be able to revisit. You can come back to it whenever you want. All those highlights and pins also live in here. And then there's also a spot for a checklist that you can, I already pre-checked them off, but you can kind of create a custom checklist of questions that you want to get answered and keep track of when you're asking them, and maybe add in additional questions as they come up. So, for the sake of time, I'm going to pop back to the deck to talk about our last final deliverable, which was kind of tacked on at the end of the project. We know that development can take a really long time. So the tool with their brand new brand and all this fun kind of new gadgets and visuals was going to be a while for them to actually start implementing it. So it was important for us to try and give them something that they could start using right away because they were so excited. So it's just that original paper-based tool, but with updated visual language. We kind of spaced out the information a bit more, so it was less overwhelming, a little bit less daunting, and more in line with the new vision for the brand. So now I will rewind back to the process of how we got to those final solutions. So we started out with foundational research. Katie, the researcher on the project, had 10 participants. A couple of them were pregnant at the time of the interviews. I think all of them had been pregnant or given birth within the last year. So there were some little baby appearances, which was really fun. We had a group of them that were multilingual, and all of the participants were Medicaid and were using Medicaid insurance. And that was really the target audience for this product. So Katie met with all of them and was really just seeking to understand their needs, motivations, and experiences throughout their own pregnancies, how they gathered information when they were making decisions, what their relationship was with their healthcare provider, what they may wish their relationship with their healthcare provider was like, and how a decision aid could help them or could have helped them in their decision-making experience. So we got a bunch of great information that kind of helped propel us forward, but some of the key takeaways were about what a decision aid should be. So we had these 4 takeaways. According to participants, a decision aid should be thorough and unbiased. all of the options should be presented equally and have the same amount of information. It should be varied yet convenient. All of the information should be communicated in a variety of formats and be able to be consumed by, those people that have a decision already in mind and those that may not. But it should all be very easily digestible and straightforward. It should be empowering and personalized. As we've already mentioned, pregnancy is very personal experience, and the user's choice and their decisions should really be at the core of the entire decision aid. And then the last one kind of ties to the first with unbiased information, but just using neutral language and making sure that you're presenting really straightforward information and not being too reassuring or persuasive about one option or the other. So while Katie was doing her foundational research, Sunny and I were kind of doing some foundational studies of our own through design reviews. We were looking at comparative, and inspirational experiences in both UX and visual design. So this is just a snapshot of a few of the 18 experiences that Sunny looked at. When she was building this, she was kind of flagging pros and cons of existing products, looking for opportunities that we could implement similar patterns or strategies into our work. I know she looked at things like language onboarding, value clarification activities, what accessible note-taking looked like, things like that. And then for the visual design review, we were building them a brand and a visual identity from scratch. So we wanted to really cast a wide net, look at where there was kind of space to fit in that maternity and healthcare space, but also more importantly, where we could stand out among the competitors. And this was really fun to just kind of dive into, what the industry standard is for that and how it either did align or did not align with what Partner to Decide wanted. They really wanted to steer away from the more kind of generic maternity branded companies, which was really cool. So once we assembled those reviews and kind of organized our thoughts, we talk through them with the client in workshops. And this is a part of, I think, all Blink design projects. There's a workshop where really fun and interesting conversations happen, and you kind of get to align on, what the Blink team may be visioning for the brand and what the client really wants and is envisioning, and just kind of align on, oh, sorry, I got a ping, on what the overall vision could be. So next is concept design, and I will follow Jill again.
All right. So before we jump in, any questions from the audience here about what you've seen so far after you've had a chance to look at the product? Perfect, because I have some information to share with you about concept design. So after the research phase, we took the insights from both stakeholder interviews and those competitive reviews, inspirational reviews, and interviews with patients to create these how might we statements. So finding opportunities out of the pain points and needs that we heard in those processes. And these were to simplify complex medical information to something that can be easily understood. One idea that came up was how to allow patients to include personal stories from the pregnant community without sounding overly biased or skewed. This is actually an idea that came up and didn't make it into the final product, but was something that was interesting to explore early on. How to help pregnant people compare birth options in an easy, engaging way without losing too much detail. So keep it high level, but not so high level that you're missing important facts and information. And how to make sure no important questions are missed during regular check-ins with the provider. Am I in Are you still following me? I should be at concept cards, so let me see.
It says I was following you, but I will.
I think we've got a prototype problem here. Let me just. There we go. All right. So thanks for bearing with us there. So from these how might we statements, we did an activity that's one of my favorite parts of our process during the interaction design phase, which is concept cards. So this is a session where we invited designers across Blink to participate in a freehand sketch sessions. So we provided these prompts, these how might we questions, and had about 90 minutes for people to sketch their ideas, share their ideas, and then you can see here some little dot voting was also a part of that session, so we could really feel where people were gravitating to. So that was a really fun activity that led to some slightly more refined sketches for these concepts that started to emerge. Some themes of how to provide hierarchy around complex information, a value slider, sort of an interaction-based idea, this idea around collecting your stuff. Can you have a central space for all of this information that you're gathering during research? Pop-up definitions, a pin it functionality, model comparison, GC checkboxes. So you can see these aren't all one type of component. They're really across the experience, whether it's a really specific UI example or a bigger concept or approach to delivering information. So another thing that was considered during the UX phase was that two patient types emerged during research. The first was the advocate. So these patients were motivated by, they already had strong preferences. They kind of knew how they felt about induction, and they either really wanted it or they really didn't. And so they were interested in using a decision aid tool to help confirm that they had made the right decision, and also help in conversations with their providers. So they were looking for support and backup. The other patient type is the researcher. This person's mind is decidedly not made up, and they were often first time. It was their first time being pregnant, and they were very anxious. So they wanted to know everything before making a decision. So these were the two mental models that we were trying to serve in creating the final tool. Both of these patient types followed the same golden path. So they started with the need of creating, or they needed credible, digestible information about their options. And the desired outcome was that they would have an in-depth discussion with their provider about the rationale behind their choice, so they could clearly say, these are my preferences and here's why. So we created interaction models for each of these patient types. On the left, you can see the advocate. For the interaction model for the advocate, they wanted to see tools for reflection. So how can they think through and confirm that their choice is what they feel is the right thing to do based on the data. And also they were looking for help to talk with about their decision with providers. The researcher model was more about research and exploration. So while they wanted more tools for learning and information gathering, they also wanted a guided experience and help talking through their various options with providers. Both of these led to the development of a design framework. So you can see here at the top, the overall customer benefit was to give pregnant people the information they needed to make a choice about induction. The pillars for this experience were that's evidence-based, that's easy, effortless learning. We would promote personalized care, so not a one-size-fits-all experience, and offer advice over solutions, which is one thing Summer you called out in the chat, really giving people the opportunity to drive their own experience, since it's really about their body and their baby. From there, the signature experiences, Lily started to highlight these already. So comparing your choices, advanced note-taking, getting the right information at the right time, and values definition. So you can see here some of as the features started to develop, going back to those concept card sketches that you saw at the beginning of this section. You can see the timely delivery of information with this right info, right time signature experience. This is on the far left, a screenshot from the home page on mobile. So starting with high level, what are my choices? Like, what's the most important thing they need to know right now? These are the choices. You can open those drop downs to expand for more information, or you can get right into the next level of detail, which is, what's normal for people right now in my situation. Compare my choices. This experience is around, there's 3 options essentially in this experience. So on mobile, this was an interesting challenge towards the end of the project, but how do you easily offer a side-by-side comparison of multiple options in a way that's not overwhelming, that's trackable and still self-directed. Defining my values. So this was crucial. So this is the end of that quiz that Lily walked you through. So at the end of the self-reflection, what's the document that the patient has to move forward with and remember and reflect on what they've shared. And then finally, advanced note-taking. This was a really cool feature, and as far as experiences go, something that was pretty robust for a tool like this, where all of that reflection can also be exported into My Stuff, where all of your advanced notes or all of your notes can be sort of organized and be meaningful for your for use in conversations with your provider, your family, and your baby's definitely going to want to see these too, I guess I would say.
So true. Okay, so we kind of had parallel work streams happening, so I'm going to kind of go back in time a little bit. So while Sunny was developing those concepts and interaction models, I was moving forward after the workshops in building out the visual identity for the brand. So in the workshops, there's really a few key activities that inform how we move forward with the visual design process. The first of which is the continuums activity. So this is where we present the client team and the Blink team with these kind of sliding scales with polar opposite ends, and throw out some interesting descriptions for what this specific product could be. Like, you can see some examples here. Where do we want to fall in how emotional our content is and how clinical it is? How minimal do we want the product to be, or do we want it to be really rich and just filled with information like a textbook or something? And there's no right or wrong answer, which makes it pretty interesting. It's just a matter of opinion and vision. So this is our results from our continuum activities. And we use them when creating kind of the keywords and form what we want the look and feel of the brand to be. The other activity that really informs visual design is keywords. We put a bank of, I think, about 50 to 60 words in front of the client team and just have them select anything that's sticking out to them most, and then kind of force them to come together and whittle them down to like 5 to 7 words. We really try and push for the more specific, the better. I think you'll always see words like honest and truthful in there, which can feel a little bit boring, but we really want to push for those more kind of fun and specific words like visionary, fearless, things like that.
Intuitive is a popular one. Like everybody wants their app to feel intuitive, but it's surprising how important these words become later on in the process to help ground the work that you're doing with the client.
Yeah. And then the third activity that really informs the how we move forward visually is the inspirational images, which is my favorite activity. It's just so fun. There's, I feel like 100, if not more, little boxes of images that are just put in the mural board in front of the client team, and they have so much fun, and they just get to pick out things that are resonating with them and that are standing out to them and that they think are cool. And we also have them sort and call out the ones that are not calling to them and do not make them feel anything. So these were the results of the images that they liked the best. And we use these moving forward into the next phase of the process, which is mood boarding. So we use the keywords and the inspirational images as kind of a starting point, but don't necessarily use any of the inspirational images in the boards if it doesn't feel right. But it's a really nice jumping off point for kind of what their look and feel vision is. So these mood boards and mood boards in general are just a tool for the designers to kind of explore and articulate the different visual directions that they could envision for the brand. And they're made up of just pre-existing images that we kind of curate and piece together to communicate a specific vibe or feeling. And I would say that while these are great for me to kind of get a feel for my own preferences, it's also really great when we walk through them with the client because we can see what their preferences are and where they feel comfortable taking their brand. We like to present kind of a mild to wild scale. So you can see calcium up there was our kind of milder, safer version, definitely more clinical feeling, definitely that trustworthy, honest kind of look and feel. And then B12, which was my favorite, is the wildest version and kind of a little bit more different than those existing companies that we looked at in the visual design review. So after kind of presenting those options to the client and talking through thoughts, feelings, what's standing out, what isn't, they land on an option and they chose the folate mood board. They really loved the kind of neutral green. They felt it was really inviting. It was giving healthcare and kind of scientific vibes without feeling too clinical or cold. They liked that it wasn't a gendered color in the maternity space. And we're just really excited about kind of how their product could take form in this visual direction. So after mood boards, we get into the visual sketching process at Blink. It's super fun. We open it up to any Blinkers that are available to come in and contribute. We show them our mood board, give them a little brief of the project, and just kind of get to go a little crazy and just explore and kind of push boundaries before figuring out how exactly we want to apply that visual style to the UI and to screens and those wireframes that Sunny was working on.
Just trying to give you a heads up. We have 6 minutes.
I see that. I will go quick through this last part. So along with just forming a visual identity for them, they also just needed a brand. So we were tasked with creating a logo for them. This is a really big deal. And we went through tons and tons of explorations. I was testing out different type styles. Is it going to be a serif, a sans serif? Is it going to be a word mark? Could it just be a symbol? How minimal can we make it? How complicated? So this was eventually where we landed. It was kind of a Frankenstein of a couple of those concepts. the client really liked this specific direction because they felt that even though the typeface was a little funky and had its own kind of personality to it, it was still pretty trusting and kind of slightly academic with the serif. The tittle of the I in decide is a speech bubble from one of the other logo explorations. And the idea behind that speech bubble was kind of tying back to Partner Decide's mission of empowering pregnant people to speak up and use their voice and engage in discussions with their providers about their wants and needs during pregnancy. This is a quick little animation that I think really brings a fun speech bubble direction to life and just shows that it can be kind of playful while still maintaining a trustworthy identity. So you can see the logo applied to some of our different colorways, our type styles. For the actual product, we really wanted to make sure it was accessible and legible. And so we chose some, bold and usable sans serif type for headings and UI, and then had our color palette, which was a really nice kind of gradient of greens with some neutrals and oranges tied in there for things like risks and other things to highlight and call out. There were some specific challenges on this project that were really interesting visual challenges, one of which was these medical diagrams. The more content that we could add a visual to, the better, because we were trying to communicate to audiences of all reading levels and languages. So illustrating things like membrane sweeping, cervical balloons, an opening cervix. I have never experienced having to illustrate something like that, so it was definitely a challenge, but I really like the vision that Anne had and that we landed on of creating these medical diagrams in a way that wasn't too graphic or kind of intimidating, but still got the point across. And then our data visualization was that other visual challenge. We had some really microscopic data to communicate. For some of the labor decisions, there was a 0.04% chance of something happening and a 0.06% chance. And depending on how you scale that and visualize it, it can kind of get misconstrued of what that actually meant and how big that difference actually was. So we had to get a little bit creative in showing some of those statistics and data, but I think we came up with a really great range and it was really successful. So I think I only left like 3 minutes, and I want to make sure we answer any questions that were in the chat that I did not see.
Okay. No questions came up through the chat yet, but we have a pretty good group in attendance here. Oh, hi, Lyric. A little bit more on the content development process. Certainly, actually, and that's a great call out. We had a great partner with the client. So Anne is the subject matter expert, and she had created a paper tool that was the source for the content that we use for the project. And her advisory board and I can't remember her title, but our other stakeholders on the client side provided the content. Hi, Kyle, welcome. And yes, feel free to check out the whole presentation later. We're really happy that everybody joined, and we look forward to sharing the Partner Decide website whenever it's launched. But in the meantime, you can find the case study on the Blink website.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
It's nice to see this little crew.
1 minute to spare.
Yes, so Summer asked if they've started using the printed tool. They were using the printed tool at the beginning of the project, and oh, you mean the new one?
I know about this.
Really? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have stayed in touch with Anne a bit. I know that they are starting to use the English version of the paper-based tool. That's all that we had time to design for, but she reached out and is wanting to get the paper-based tool going and the other language options that they need. And once they have all of those ready, they're going to just fully move forward with the paper-based tool. So hopefully this summer, they will all be in use out in the world.
Very exciting. I keep waiting for I think maybe we might get kicked off, but if there's any more questions, let's just let the time run out. Thanks everybody for participating.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jill and Lily. Thanks everybody for joining and enjoy the rest of the conference.